podcast where we're going to be talking with. I guess I'm going to do fucking introductions. This is Tage, the person that everyone hates on Twitter from the anime right community. They all hated Tage, the incestophobe, the poo and the loo from India. But he's actually not actually a terrible person. You just actually have to talk to him for once and realize he's not a cunt. Welcome, Tage.
I can be. I mean...
You can be a cunt, I guess, but, like, you know, you try not to be most of the time. Anyways. But...
I have my mood swings up and down, you know.
Yep.
Depends on when you catch me.
Then we have Caster Magic Vagabond, the fucking Sayaka-ass bitch. The forever centrist. The forever fuck you, I won't believe anything you say bitch on Twitter. Also became incredibly gay at some point. I don't remember when that happened, but would you like to explain that?
Yeah, that's no longer a thing.
Oh, he's not gay anymore.
Oh, not gay anymore.
When did that happen?
Maybe about a week ago. I just decided not to be gay one day. It just happened.
Proof that homosexuality is a choice.
Homosexuality is a choice. I never knew.
We're really breaking new ground already.
Yep.
And
next up we have... I'm just going to introduce Ornstein last because I hate him. Then we have Skinderbeg, which I always pronounce Skindenberg because he is the Jew. He's a Greek Orthodox bitch from Twitter. And he's very much a Christ poster, very much deist-fold, very much influential. How are you doing, Skinned?
Good. What about you?
Doing very, very good. Very good. He's also a libertarian capitalist, although he doesn't talk about that much. He's much more interested in talking about the Greek Orthodoxy that he is influenced in. That's had a lot more of an influence on his life than I think his libertarian views have. I think most of his political views have to do with leave me the fuck alone. And then then after Skinned, we have, of course, Ornstein. Ornstein is a person nobody watching this will know unless I link this in Ape Room. Ornstein, of course, is a lovable, monotone character that shouldn't be loved, but has a bunch of memes made about him because he likes to suck people's dicks. How are you doing, Ornstein?
I'm doing all right. I'm a little bit less all right, though, due to the implications.
Implications, they're not implications, they're accusations, and they're correct accusations.
100% false.
No, I think we have pretty definite proof. Bork, do you want to pull up some proof? Anyways, yeah, we can pull that up later. Yeah, I'll bring that up later. You can send it to me in a DM. I'll have it ready for the video. Anyways, but and also on the sidelines we have well, I guess it might not be on the sideline. I don't know how active you want to be in the conversation, but we have Anarchy Nazi. I don't know who you are, man. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm objectivist Nazi who fucking loves trash.
Objectivist Nazi. Does that mean you like Ayn Rand?
Yes, I love it.
How does that even work?
How the fuck does that work? How can you be objectivist and a Nazi at the same time?
It's because he's not an
objectivist and love traps at the same time.
Because traps aren't
as
gay.
described by autistic ANCAP, if I'm correct. I'm an ANCAP who likes to LARP as a Nazi.
Okay. And then
Are you full of ANCAP?
as always, at the very end of the bed, snuggled up against the couch, we have my dog Bork, who will be here to promote memes and to be happy and wag his tail. Okay, and so let's go ahead and start this talk. I wanted to mainly make this about what I was looking at, the Twitter conversation that happened earlier with Tage. I think it was Dot, who was Scorpio Dickler on Twitter, came up and he started fucking talking the shit to Tage. I don't remember exactly. Do you remember exactly what he started saying to you? It was a thread started by Magic Caster and said, it doesn't matter where your political position lies, no matter what, there's always talk about human nature. And I responded, I agree wholeheartedly. We could spend time focusing on philosophical points we could all agree on, rather than moot political points. Then Magic Caster said, getting people to agree on those philosophical points is just as hard as getting them to agree on the political points, though. And then I responded by talking about Tage. I said, fuck, I hate my fucking phone. But basically I said, well, I actually think that I agree with Tage on a few things. on a very basic philosophical level rather than actually, even though I'm on the exact fucking opposite political end of the spectrum than he is. And then here, this is what it said. I came to realize that actually R.U. Tage does agree with me about fundamental human nature, but I think it manifests differently within a society. So we have a point of agreement, and our conflict is how apparent it is in how the nature itself plays out in time. And then Matt Castor put out his points, and I don't really care about what he says. I only care about what Tage says. Tage says humans do have inherent nature. Selfishness is the most prevalent. I would say it's not impossible to deviate from, however. And then Dot came in and did a fucking autistic fit, and then got everyone upset. And then I had to explain that he has autism, and then the thread went to complete shit. But I wanted to talk about the beginning of the thread there, which was basically, it's kind of like a confirmation of horseshoe theory, which is the further apart you get from someone, the closer together your beliefs actually are, in a sense. Or rather, it's like the more radical or reactionary someone gets, the closer alike they are. But anyways, I actually do think it is an example of horseshoe theory kind of here, which is that I think that if we start talking about it here, that we will have, me and Tage specifically will have a very similar idea of negative human nature. And while we're talking about that, we will talk about everyone else's ideas in this chat here about it. But specifically,
well, even just now, I think I disagree slightly, because I mean you're assigning already a negative value to selfishness.
I'm assigning a negative value to it, but I think that's the conflict I want to get through here.
Well, already.
And
okay.
I
we
don't
can
want
get
to
to
start with human nature itself. I want to start with the point of anarchy, and I know you don't really get it, but the reason I always start with this is because when you have people like Ornstein and Maga that you're talking to, the people that, or even really skinned, that are in the bottom right corner of the spectrum, with minarchists, they really want to get into the nitty gritty. And I've only really had this conversation with Maga, but there's a couple of other people I've also had it with, which is that they want to argue for pure anarchy. They start to make an argument about why should a state control us, period. And they start that statement by making an argument that government within itself is not actually natural. And they say that the civilizations that were created over time are actually an artificial institution created by people that want to control other people and establish hierarchies. The hierarchies the hierarchies that are created from predatory natures are inherently natural, but that the government systems created through those hierarchies are not natural. And so I wanted to talk about that, which is basically, I want to go through the room and see what everyone thinks. And this is the example I give because it's the most natural one. The first civilizations that were made that we have recorded on Earth are the Mesopotamian River Valley civilizations, I believe. I might be wrong on that, but I believe that's what it is. So if you put, and this is just the control situation, this scientific experiment, you put a pack of humans, just a random pack of humans, tribalistic humans, into a river valley that has water and that has natural resources, and it's isolated off from anybody else, would they establish a civilization? Which means, would they create a language? Would they create agriculture? Would they begin creating human law? Like, would all of those things begin to take form over thousands of years if you dumped a tribe of humans into a river valley? And I want to start off going to, I guess we'll start off with going from top to bottom. Magic Vagabond, Magic Caster, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that is true, that eventually they would form a civilization over time.
Yeah. Okay, how fast do you think it would happen?
I would say pretty well. I'd say it depends on how fast the language develops in general. But as the language develops, I believe afterwards, civilization will come sooner or later.
And while we're going down the list, I just want to make it clear, I'm not saying that the anarchist argues that they would never create any culture or civilization whatsoever, but that people that are in the anarchist mindset have a different opinion of it, which is they say the government wouldn't take form, but rather that the society itself would create a system where everyone creates mutual consensual transactions without the government even needing to exist. Because their mindset isn't that the government is what prevents unfair transactions from happening. Their idea is that the government is everything that interferes with consensual fair transactions from happening. So they think that if you eliminated the government completely and you had corporations managing every single transaction, that would be the natural society that would be created. So the entire thing, the only difference between the anarchist state and the government state is whether or not there is a government. I think that like civilization would still happen, that agriculture would still be created, but the difference between the anarchy state in the river valley and the government state is just the actual government, somebody that's not involved within the economic transaction system. Ornstein, what do you think? What do you think would happen if you dumped a tribe of humans? Would they create a code of law to govern themselves?
Now, I got a quick thing to ask about first before I get into that, because you were talking about me before, and I didn't really want to interrupt. You were talking about people who like the whole minarchist thing. Now, one thing that I want to say about myself before I really get into this is that I'm still developing my political and philosophical opinions. That's one of the reasons why I created that server of mine that you were talking about before.
Yeah, Ornstein right now, he has created a Discord server called The Academy. It'll be linked down in the description of this YouTube video if you ever want to watch it. If you're one of the 5 fucking people watching this, you can go and you can fucking look at his thing. It's going to be filled with people talking about philosophy. I'm pretty sure, is it going to be mostly philosophy, or is there going to be any politics in there?
Yeah, it's philosophy, politics, economics. Really, just anything that you're wanting to talk about. Really, I got a section for it.
And right now you're currently reading Plato's Republic, correct?
Yeah. It's kind of got a pseudo book club aspect to it, and it's also got like a shit posting section. So just have fun there too if you want to join.
All right, that sounds really good. All right, awesome. So go ahead and talk about. So you're developing your political opinion.
Yeah, and you were talking about people who kind of want to keep the basically no state. Now, although as of this moment I do consider myself a minarchist, that may change. I am open to argumentation about why that's wrong. I don't really fall in line completely with a lot of them. Like for me and Maga kind of have our spats back and forth about the nature of environment regulation and stuff like that. We have our spats about that. So I don't think that I'm really too far gone with it. I'm definitely more statist than he is. So there's a line to be drawn. Now, in terms of what you were talking about, dropping a whole bunch of humans into a river valley and seeing what happens, okay? That's something that's kind of really up in the air, because we're going off the base assumption here that you're talking about these humans are in a vacuum. They don't know anything. They're basically Neanderthals with our DNA. That kind of thing. Right, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, no. There's nothing inherently different about these humans, and they're not a specific genetic. I didn't say they were white or African American or Indian or anything, even though race realists or anybody like that would really be really fucking interested in that. But
let's not get into that today.
That is interesting.
But we're not delving into that fucking topic.
Yeah.
What we're
I'm just saying
have,
human.
Yeah, if you having a basic human being that has no interesting or unique characteristics about it, and you dumped a tribe of them, they're tribalistic. Would they create a state, or would they go into would they naturally be led to more of a system of consensual transactions, morally authoritated? Need to be articulate.
Now this is going to get into some of my personal beliefs here, okay? Now, I'm going to assume that you're talking about just a whole bunch of humans from our current generation. All the evolution that we've gone through right now is still up in the air. It's still actually happened. So I would say, yeah, they would create a form of government. They are at least a very, very small one. It would probably wind up at the very start over some very small disagreements, winding up them breaking up into tribes or something. If they were ever able to actually overcome that, they'd of course get a religion, not a religion. They would of course get a language before this, most likely, because you have to have language before you can really start disagreeing for the most part over anything less than that man has my chicken, I'm gonna kill him. But so there's going to be that. They're going to start a religion. They will. I keep on saying religion. I think that religion is something that's inherent to the human condition. I think it's an evolutionary trait. So they would actually start developing that. It helps fight against tribalism, and it helps promote order within a society. So given a couple thousand years, a lot of breeding, a lot of misunderstandings, tribe warfare, eventually a government would take place, just because that's the natural progression of humans. Whenever you have societies that are much too large for them to just run off base human instinct anymore and still prosper, governments have to be instituted. So yeah.
All right. So it's a natural progression of things, and governments have to be instituted to actually do some amount of moral authoritation, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, of course. Right. It keeps everybody civil and in working order. Without that, tribalism reigns, and anarchy can't really work forever.
So okay, and then so now we're going to go into skin. Do you have anything to say about this? What do you think about this topic?
So yeah, like I said, I kind of preface once again, I'm not a full anarchist. I'm, like I said, more just a minarchist, straight up. I believe there's some functions like government. There's some valid functions for government, protecting borders, and then upholding basic rule of law and that kind of stuff. But basically my thoughts for the whole thing on this would be throwing people into River Valley there. Obviously, language, of course, would probably form within a generation. I'd even say at least some rudimentary form of language would. Agriculture, of course, definitely. Anything human history has shown that pretty much any time anyone's within a river valley, anywhere in the world, really, some form of basic agriculture has come up. And then as far as government, I think that after a certain point, some sort of at least limited form of government would come up. At the very least, they have.
Okay. And so now we're going to move on to you, Tage. So, Tage, has your opinion changed on this? So basically, this is the basic thing. It's the anarchy argument, of course. If we dumped, they have no particular traits about them. All it is that they're a group of humans, and of course they're tribalistic, which means they will form packs and they will try to fend for themselves in those packs. If you dumped a tribe of humans into a river valley with all of the natural resources and water they need, and they're isolated from any other group of humans, would they form a government? And would they form like natural law? Or would they form, a kind of system, a different kind of system, of an anarchistic kind of system to actually authoritate them?
What I think about it is that the most base human nature is self-interest. Evolutionarily, that's undoubtedly true.
Darwinistic evolutionary self-interest?
Yes, of course. Tribalism is attached to that because humans only associate tribes insofar as it's within their self-interest instinctively. I think that a government would form because the principles underpinning government in general are giving up certain freedoms in order to have security, which that's going to make it more likely for you to in evolutionary terms to survive and pass on your genes at the most basic level. In terms of government, I think that even from that point, you could argue that an anarchic form of government could take place, but I think the reason that it wouldn't is because as long as it remains within human self-interest in certain times to control other humans, which it always will, the people trying to do that will always manifest.
Yeah.
So, within the selfish attempts of people to control other people, government will always manifest. I kind of look at government and civilization as the human's form of like a beehive. It's just something that happens because of our collective nature.
Yeah, and
it's what we do.
I would try to add something onto all of this, but actually everyone here has come from it from a bunch of different angles and actually pretty much said a lot of what there is to say about this topic, which is that, pretty much everything you can say for the argument for this. And so I pretty much agree with what all three of you have said on this topic and with what Castor said about it. And pretty much most closely aligned with what Tage said, which is just, I think it's that, the self-interest of the people that is involved will eventually come to, it will eventually come to a point of self-harm or harming of someone else that someone cares about. And at that point, it will bring about a government because the people will decide, I don't want to harm other people out of it. I think it is birthed out of a form of empathy, which is that I see someone hurting someone and I don't want my people to be hurt. It's like, okay, I have a wife, he has a wife, I'm hurting his wife, and it turns out I don't want my wife to be hurt in return. And so I'm going to create a governing body that makes it certain that neither of our wives are hurt. And that's the best way I can explain it right now.
Well,
and I agree with that. I just don't know how well I got that idea across with my kind of speech here. I'm just kind of tired, so I apologize.
It's basically the self-interest of the people is expressed through empathy, and the empathy of seeing the other person's self-interest creates the government, which it creates the authority that allows everyone to be happy. It sees a common interest in not hurting each other. And so
but what I think it's important to make the distinction that the humans only associate with each other to each other's benefit only insofar as it's in the self-interest of the individuals doing it.
That's what I was actually going to get on.
As soon as it becomes beneficial for somebody to harm somebody else to their own benefit, you almost have to expect that they're going to do so.
Now that's where we can have a little bit
in general, because not necessarily that always.
I could agree with you, but we could go through some scenarios where I might start deferring. I agree with the statement you just said, but I think that if we started talking about it a little bit more, I might have some more things to say about it.
Okay.
Now, something that I would like to say on the topic that you were talking about, Zipper, the whole idea of empathetic reasoning behind it. I get where you're coming from on that, although I'm not really sure if it's empathy. I think it might actually be inherent selfishness of man. And I do to a certain extent. Maybe not to a certain extent. I do actually think
I'm saying it's a string. It's a chain of emotions, is what I'm saying, Ornstein. It starts with selfishness. It's the selfishness. I want the things I own to be protected. I want the people I love to be protected. But then I think that the second step is an empathetic step. I don't think it goes straight from selfishness to government. I think it goes from selfishness to empathy to government. I mean, the reason I think that is because you can't see the point in having the government authoritate over both of you and agree to authoritate over both of you, unless you have that sense of empathy. Because because if you didn't see that,
I'm going to disagree with you, and let me explain why.
If you didn't see the component of empathy, then I don't see why the anarchist argument doesn't make sense. Why wouldn't you just hire someone, a bigger bully, someone that's stronger than you, to beat the living shit out of the other person so that he'll never touch your wife ever again? I don't see why I wouldn't do that.
Because that would just cause more and more of the same thing to happen.
Yeah.
No, but it's
out of mutual self-interest. I think at some point those came together and like, look, this is becoming a big problem. It's happened to you. We got to delegate this to someone who can go ahead and decide, mediate these disputes, and come to and pass judgment upon criminals.
Before we keep going, I really wanted to make sure Anarchy Nazi had a chance to talk, so that he could give his opinion on all this, because you did say you were an objectivist, so you might have an entirely different opinion on all this.
To me, I think that they wouldn't form really a government in the sort. I think they would. It's weird for me. From human perspective, I think that a selfish human being would eventually, because they are normal human beings, right?
They are normal human beings. The only thing that's unique about them, they are tribalistic. There's nothing genetically unique about them. They've just been tossed into a river valley, and they have all of the resources available to them to create a civilization.
I don't necessarily think they would create a civilization. However, I think maybe a cult would spring up, and that would become basically it'd just become the ultimate thing of dominance among them. Because
that's an organization, a level of organization.
Yeah, basically. However, I think.
But what I'm asking is, so would the cult? Would that have a moral authority over the people?
Essentially, yeah. It would have almost a religious.
Then what's the difference between the cult and the government? in a sense? What's the difference between
Not
the two?
necessarily anything different. It's just more theocratic, I guess. It is a
Yeah, it would just
So,
essentially be a
it's a government, but it's a
state.
theocracy.
It would be
Yes,
a
it's a
primitive
government.
government, I think, is what
Yes,
he's
it'd be-
saying.
So
Yeah.
and I think
It takes
I think
time to
most
develop into what we have now.
I think most primitive
Yeah.
governments were theocracies because if you go back into the thousands BC,
Yes.
there was a very difficult problem that the universal world had to deal with, which was separating the top emperor, the dictator, or whoever led the pack of humans or human beings from the transcendent being or a monotheistic being or a polytheistic being. And that was what was happening with the emperor of Egypt. That was what was happening with the emperor of China. That's what happened all over the world, was that there was a hard abstract concept of having to separate the person that was ruling the kingdom or country with the actual god, with the actual being that ruled domain over everything that lived ever. And that was a very difficult concept for human beings to actually encapture. And so that's what you're dealing with right there. So that I think what you're describing right there actually is a government.
Pedophilia is bad. Please don't rape babies.
Actually is a civilization.
Yeah,
It's a very primitive theocracy.
Yes, very primitive. And however, I do think that there would be a good want to start like some sort of some sort of agriculture and other such. However, the cult would see that, they would say, either is it going to benefit us, okay? And they said, well, if you aren't helping out me, basically if you aren't dealing in trade with me, then I don't think, then no, it's not going to benefit you. And they would instantly shut that shit down, okay? Like maybe for raiding or some shit like that. Okay, or maybe they just straight up kill them.
Yeah. So. And now we have Gondola, who has decided to go ahead and pop back in. And he is, I want to remind everyone who Gondola is. He is the cutest kawaii girl that has ever existed on any Twitter. And he has always amazing, interesting, fantastic, wonderful things to say always, which is why he always shows up late to streams. And so what I want to say is I want to say hi to Gondola. I want to give him a warm welcome. And I want to ask him the same question we asked everyone else here. And see if he has anything funny or interesting to say about it. Are you okay with that? All right.
Yeah, sure, dude.
Cool. So we gave a scenario. We're talking about anarchy versus government. We're giving the minarchist argument, which is basically, I've been given to this from a couple of people that I've talked to that regard to themselves either as anarcho-capitalists or minarchists. And what they say is, why isn't anarchy the natural state of government? And governments actually aren't supposed to have natural law over you. The social contract is a spook. And this is what their argument is let's have this scenario. You throw a tribe of people, a tribalistic group of human beings that don't have anything genetically particularly special about them, into a river valley. So they're in a river valley that's isolated from everything else, and they have all of the resources available to them to develop a civilization. Do those people create a government that has moral authority over them, or has some sort of authority over them? It doesn't have to be moral authority. Does it dictate law over them, or do they create any other kind of anarchistic kind of corporate system that kind of dictates how the transactions between the groups goes? So do you believe that a government would form, or do you believe that anarchy would be able to actually work within that river valley system?
I mean, I think it all just depends on the people, really. Because there have been plenty of scenarios where you have people living in the river valley and they have all the tools to become a civilization, right?
Right.
But then, this is like, why, that's like asking the question, how come the Indus Valley civilization was created over, 6,000 years ago? Mm-hmm. But the Native American tribes never became a true civilization. They never pushed past the tribal society. but they had all the same resources as them.
What's interesting is some actually did.
They actually didn't have the same resources.
Well, I'm saying not all of them.
That's the reason why.
They didn't actually invent the same things. First of all, they never actually fucking invented the wheel. Second of all, they didn't have the same kind of animals as we did. They didn't have the same kind of herding animals we did. They didn't have the same kind of farm animals that we did. The closest thing they had to a horse that we did was the fucking llamas, or the alpacas, I guess, is what you'd call them, and they are not worth the fucking shit. And if you wanted something like a cow, the best thing you could do is, like, I guess the damn bison, and bison are fucking hard as shit to kill, especially if you're a man with a spear. And it's
but they still did form agriculture in a form of civilization.
They did agriculture in a form of civilization, but the thing is that it's not only that, but it's also their concept of ideas that and this may be something, and I don't want to I feel like if I say this, we're going to start a fucking hour-long conversation about it, because this is going to be bad, but I think that it had to do with their concept of property, which is that the Native Americans believed that the land belonged to the earth, and because of that, they only existed within the tribes. They never had the territorial battles they had were between the tribes themselves. They never believed they actually owned the land itself. And the whole Western idea of owning land and then accruing wealth on it is actually really important to creating countries and civilizations and statehood, which is why I think which I don't think it's the only factor. I think it's a minor factor in a collection of dozens of other factors as to why North and South America did not develop civilizations the same way the Eurasian continent did.
I think that the reason what you're saying is true, and there are multiple factors, but I think they can all be reduced to the fact that they originated in different conditions.
Yes.
I think the conditions under which they were forced to form their civilizations can be held to be the reason why they created there are any differences in their civilizations.
So you think
because I mean, unless you are going to make an argument that they were significantly different physiologically, because the only two things that can result in any circumstances are either physiological differences or environmental differences.
Well, I think the only physiological differences between the Native Americans and the Europeans is that they had more Mongoloid DNA. But I don't think that the people from the Asian continent had any problems creating civilization, because the Chinese and the Japanese and any of the people from the East Asian continent had no problems creating civilizations similar to the ones in the West. So
yeah, I
don't think that necessarily was a problem physiologically.
Yes, so then my argument would be that the only reason why the civilizations they created differed even slightly is because of the conditions being different.
Yeah, no, I'm not going to necessarily argue that, because I don't really know whether or not you're right or wrong, and I actually would have to really think about that for a while as to whether or not I'd agree with you. But I want to go ahead and move on. See, we've pretty much covered this topic. Pretty much the majority of everyone agrees with what we said. We have the objectivist in the bottom here that says that, well, anarchy Nazi, basically what you said is that you believe that really civilization wouldn't be made, but that you believe that it would all originate from a religion. You think that a religion would basically be a culmination of it. You don't think it would be...
And I would agree with him.
Well, I think... Well,
because...
Yeah,
here's the thing with me. I may be a political person, however, my heart is where religion is, because I have been studying religion generally my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
Ever since I've learned about it, I loved learning about religion and generally other things. And religion has a lot of control over people, and that's the one thing I've learned about it. Is that one main thing that I've learned about is that it's a tool used by primitive people to control other primitive people who are less intelligent, almost creating, like as described, almost a cult of personality. Because the person who created the religion in the first place, it could be about a fucking donkey for all I care about. The religion isn't exactly specified, because I don't know what religion would be made. I can't really make that that inference. However, I can make that it would essentially be revolved around the person creating the religion. They would have some sort of influence on that. They might create perhaps a self-insert personality inside the religion to almost represent them, or maybe they would just say that they are the god, or maybe they are the prophet of instead God, or something along those lines.
Well, I guess what I say to that is that I do think I agree with you. It's just that my disposition towards it as a religious person is that I try to hold the other religions into a slightly higher regard than that. And so the way I phrase it is different. I think I say that religion in itself is a way of representing abstract ideas and dramatically playing out hard and complex ideas in a way that we are not able to currently articulate.
So basically, histrionics.
Well, yeah,
I would say that
histrionics is a very good way of putting it. It's basically just like a way. It's very much just a way of saying things that we know are morally correct. That like we really have a hard time of saying. And I know actually, I remember Tage you saying many times that you have a lot of different problems with the several different places in the Abrahamic Bible, and I think that would be a discussion topic for another time. That would be a discussion.
I would not even arguing. I'm not like whether irrespective of what your opinion on a particular or several particular religions are. I don't think it's deniable that to create religion is within human nature, and what I attribute it to is that humans are naturally off-put by the unexplainable, and religion at its most base level is an attempt to explain those things.
And this was something that I was actually going to get into, and Zipper, you might actually wind up disagreeing with me on this matter, but that would be fine with me. I kind of touched on it before whenever I was talking about my ideas on this entire matter, but I honestly believe that that religion is an evolutionary trait. I believe that it gave a foundation for society to take place and take root. Because nobody's going to listen to some, weirdo on the side of the road saying, be nice to your neighbor because you want them to be nice to you. That will work with some people, but that won't work with all people. Well, because it's very easy to brush that off. But as soon as you have a big invisible man in the sky that sees everything that you do, and if you do something wrong, he might strike fire upon your cow, well, that's something a little bit different, and that's a little bit harder to ignore.
I will say that I don't necessarily agree that religion is necessary for society to form, but I will say that religion is a very useful tool in creating moral norms that would facilitate a society. So I agree with you to an extent.
Yeah. I'm not really sure where I fall on this. All I know is that, as far as I can tell, there's never really been a very successful, completely atheistic society in my knowledge, but I could be wrong on that. And that's why I'm kind of leaning more towards that I think that religion is something that is very useful and borderline necessary for a good and healthy society.
Now,
one thing that I point out is that atheism hasn't been prevalent in humans for very long.
No, that's true.
Yeah,
atheism has never been tried, and I'm just kidding.
Well,
that was a joke. Anyway,
we can have an in-depth discussion about this later. It's
fine. Sure.
But Ornstein, the one thing I'll agree with you. I think I do agree with you on that to an extent, but I think actually I agree with you to it on a much more basal level, which is I think it was a prehistoric concept of religion, which is that I think there's very, very basic things we consider that are humane and humanity. There's things about humans that we consider very basic and fundamental that I think were created out of religious concepts that we have forgotten as an entire species even existed, or that we hadn't learned. And that
I think
now
we might also take a lot of them for granted too.
I think if those things were taken away from us one day, that we would turn into complete animals, and that we would turn into these things. Now you could debate that. You could say that consciousness has a lot more to do with that, and that that could be completely different. But like I said, we're going very tangential here, and so I'm going to go ahead and let's move on to the second topic. What do you want to?
I just want to add one last thing.
If I may add,
I just think that Native Americans are smooth brain shads, honestly.
They didn't have right to the land.
That's basically it. That's all I want to say.
If I may add, as a objectivist myself, I do think anyone making the argument that it's the natural order of things, that's how things would happen, is generally a very bad argument, because it's that's called a fallacy. It's called the appeal to nature fallacy. So just generally, I think it's a bad argument.
But even no one is saying that just because something happens naturally necessitates it being right or wrong.
Well, true.
No, like even from the anarchist position, you could see that humans create societies, but say that that's not the best way that humans should organize.
Yeah, true.
Okay.
So states of nature aren't necessarily right or wrong. They have no moral positive or negative
Yeah,
value.
like I was saying
So
before.
now we can
nature
move on
being
to
moral.
what humans actually are in state of nature. So, there's generally, when you go into certain philosophers, there's three like different positions that separate philosophers have taken. And we're not going to go into the philosophers, but we're going to go into three positions, which is generally, some people think that all humans are generally benevolent, that people, if they have the free time and excess resources, would spend their resources to help other people, to go to the benefit of other people, because they understand other people's struggles and they understand other people's suffering. And so they would use all of their free time to help other people. Then you have people that are neutral, which they believe that people fundamentally, they have a component of self-interest, but they also have a component of empathy. And so it's just like they'll go around, and if they see someone struggling, they might do it, and it's really just a matter of free will. It's just like they might decide it, they might not. It's kind of a whim kind of thing. And so there's the neutral stance, and then there is the negative stance. There's the negative stance, which is the negative stance is that, well, pretty much everyone is focused on the scarcity of resources, and everyone is focused on the negative concept of human, the element, which is basically, okay, everyone needs stuff, and once everyone gets everything they need, everyone has stuff they want. And once everyone has stuff they want, they get something they want, they have something else that they want. And they don't really mind stepping on other people's toes or trampling over people to get what they want. And they don't really give a crap about other people unless it's to the benefit of themselves to help other people. The only time they help other people if it's to the benefit of themselves. That's the negative stance. Mm-hmm. And so I want to go around, and you can kind of twist around the definition to your own benefit to help out explain your own definition. But kind of give, if you're positive, neutral, and negative, kind of go down the line. We'll start off again with Magic Caster, and then go down the line. And we're going to skip Chill Dude because he's a fucker. And you
don't want to hear my opinion?
No, I want to hear your opinion, but I'm going to give you the time to come up with a nice, smooth, cheesy line to say at the end.
I already have it.
Okay, go ahead.
I believe they're all stupid. I believe in what Diogenes says about humans.
Oh, fuck the traps?
No. Man is just a bipedal, featherless chicken.
Okie doke. Alright, Caster, go ahead.
I say I lie firmly in the middle. When it comes to that stance,
As
I
usual.
believe that a lot of it largely huh?
Layout centrist.
Oh yeah.
Man is a featherless biped.
Largely has to do with the morals that you're instilled with early on in your life, and generally you'll carry those out throughout most of your life, and that'll kind of decide whether or not.
We're talking about as in a state of nature. There is no nobody is instilling morals in you.
Yeah, no, this has nothing to do with like what somebody else does to you. It's about what a person or you yourself would do in a situation. So it's like, think about it this way. It's like, I'm trying to think of a scenario. It's like, okay, so you have, someone gives you $20 and you ask to distribute it evenly in a room with two other people, and you can distribute it however you want. And you have to be with these people for the rest of the day. So would you give those people, how much money would you give those two people if you had $20? And how much would you keep for yourself?
Okay, yeah.
I think that's a poor way of putting it, because
okay, make it $1,000. First of all,
how about we make it $1,000? Well,
the reason why
it's more. I'm putting it in the frame set concept of a game, because it's a game where you're playing with other people and you're doing it. But
okay, but if you want it to have it be a true test of whether somebody is self-interested, you should make it so that there would be no repercussions no matter how they distributed the money, and they don't have to spend the rest of the day with the people no matter how they distribute the money. Because if you're adding in the extra caveat that they have to spend the rest of the day with those people, then it's feasible that they would distribute the money equally and still have it be in self-interest because they don't want to get beat up or something.
Okay, so let's say
You see what I'm saying?
So a caster, you're in a torture chamber. You're outside of a torture chamber watching. You have two people that are about to be tortured. One of them is your wife, and one of them is a slut. And you don't really care about. And by slut, I mean it's someone that you really, really hate, and you don't care about them at all. And you can choose to save both of them. You can choose to save neither of them. If you choose to save neither of them, you get $100,000. So would you save both of them? Would you save your wife? Would you save neither of them and get $100,000? What would you do? I'm making this up on my own, so go ahead and do it.
Are you saying? Well,
so there's 3 different things you can do. So you could save both of you. The benevolent thing to do would be to save both of them and not get any money. The neutral thing to do would be, well, the neutral thing to do would pretty much just to be to save your wife and to let the slut die. Which basically, what I mean by slut, and I don't mean slut as in someone who's been sexually promiscuous. I mean by someone. Let's not make them a slut. Let's make them a serial killer rapist. Someone that's just really horrible and that really deserves to die. Someone that really should die, and that you personally don't want to live anyways. But if you were a benevolent person, you would let live because everyone deserves to live. Blah blah blah, whatever. This is the morals. We're making up morals as we go along. So there we go. So the neutral stance would be to let that person die because they really don't deserve to live because they'll probably kill someone else, and to let your wife live and not take the money. And then the evil thing to do is to let both of them die and take the money. So
I'd actually make the argument that it would not be benevolent to let the rapist or serial killer, whatever they are, live.
Yeah, you could make that argument.
Why can't you just save the serial killer rapist? I'm making up morals on the spot here because I don't.
Yeah, I think what the problem is that you made a scenario that has too many factors to just decide whether what choice you're taking is benevolent.
Plus, in this case, the neutral one is actually the most objective. Looking at it from objective perspective.
Does anyone else think they have a very good? They have a human state of nature scenario.
I have one. We'll go back to the money thing.
I'll let Gondal ask his question, and then Tage bring up your.
Okay. So when you're deciding whether to kill or let these people go, right?
Yeah.
So if I say I think they should die, do I get to personally kill them? Because that really factors into my question or my answer.
If you want to.
All right, I'll kill them both.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Tage.
The scenario I'm talking about is, say it doesn't really matter how much money it is, I would say, but say that you have an amount of money. You can distribute it among you and 3 other people however you want to, and after you distribute it, you'll never see these people again in your life, and nobody will know how you distributed the money.
Okay.
That's the scenario that I think would be the most telling.
All right. So let's do that one then because that makes a lot of sense to me. So we'll start again with Caster. And so here's what to do. So you have a shit ton of money. Let's just give a figure so that we can know. Or basically. Well, let's not give a figure. It's just a shit ton of money. It
doesn't matter. It's immaterial. That just adds an.
So Caster, you're given a shit ton of money, and there's 2 other people in the room with you. And you have the choice to give them money or to keep it all for yourself, and you never have to see these people ever again. Okay, so
nobody has to know what happened and went down that day.
So, do you give either of them any money, or do you keep it all for yourself and you walk away?
I believe most people would either keep it all for themselves or give them a little bit of the money. They wouldn't give them like an even amount at all.
So you're arguing for inherent selfishness that you were arguing against earlier. So have you been convinced then?
I don't know if I've been convinced, but I do agree in that situation at least. Yeah.
Okay. What I was trying to create is create more of a game where if you have a game where you have to spend more time with the person. Basically, you create a metagame where you have to have more opportunities to play the game with them. So like, let's say if you have to give $20 to a couple of people, then maybe an opportunity will come up where they get $20 and they have to give money to you. And that's, that's basically the concept of having to play multiple games with a person and wanting them to play
that creates the scenario. That creates a scenario where even distributing the money evenly or giving them more of it wouldn't necessarily be altruistic, because it would be in your self-interest if you have to deal with that person later on.
It'd be in your it would be in your self-interest to do that later.
So it would be like, it's just the same way that it's the principle of we only benefit others insofar as it benefits ourselves on a whole.
So generally, I think Castor is saying that he kind of believes in a selfish interest. If not, it's pointing towards neutral, but mostly I see it's inherently selfishness and kind of a negative outlook, as a greedy outlook at the very best. And Ornstein, so what do you think would happen? What do you think a person would do in that scenario? A general person would do, given all that money? Would they give any money to the other two people, or would they walk out and never see them again?
All right. Well, let me have you restate all the details for me real quick. That way, I know exactly what I'm thinking. So like I said, I'm kind of quiet.
You're in a room with two other people. A man in a suit gives you a shit ton of money. It's a shit ton of money. You'll never have to worry about anything ever again. But he tells you that you should give some money to the two other people in the room, because they don't have any money. And so you have the option to give money to two of the other people, or you have the option to walk out, and there's no repercussions to it whatsoever. You will never see those two people ever again, and you can walk out with all the money right now. What do you think will happen to the person that is given the shit ton of money?
Okay, so we're assuming that this person is just base human, right? Like there's no socialization or anything like that.
Most average person you can find.
Okay, like now, just to be clear, and I might be being stupid here. I'm not meaning to annoy, but in regards to the whole base human thing, are you talking about like just an average person off the street? Or are you talking about like the tribe of people that we just dropped? You know, assuming they understand the concept of currency.
I assumed average.
Let's assume that we can take a person with knowledge of modern currency and divorce them entirely from whatever moral foundation they might have been taught as a child.
Just the human animal with currency.
The human animal with the knowledge of what currency is.
They have no moral foundation, but they understand exactly what the currency is and exactly what they can do with it.
Oh, well, then they would take it.
Yeah, that's
simple as that.
All right, Skinned, what's your...
At least 9 times out of 10.
All right.
I mean, I don't even think 9 times out of 10. I think 10 times out of 10 they would take it.
No, I think most of them probably. I don't think everyone just take. I don't think 10 out of 10 times everyone just take it and leave. I think they probably at least if they start off in the same room as other people. I think they probably at least give some. I do believe there's some natural degree of empathy if you're in, but at the same time, I think they walk out with the majority of themselves for sure.
Okay.
Now, let me explain to you why exactly I disagree with that, if you don't mind. I'm not meaning to cut off Tage. One thing that I'm sure you guys are probably aware of, but I like thinking about it an awful lot because it kind of haunts me, is the Wild Child, if you've ever heard of her. I don't remember her exact name, but basically, she was a child that was abused. I suppose abuse may not be the correct word for this. I mean, she was abused, but it was mainly neglect. Completely neglected, tied up in a room all of her early life, up until the point where she was like, I don't know, 14, I think, something like that. Maybe it was 12, I don't know. I don't really recall. But see, this was something that was very special for psychology, because this is essentially a perfect time to experiment on something that you can't normally experiment with, because it would be morally depraved for you to do so. So you found something in nature that you can't actually test. And she acted like an animal, completely like an animal. She had nothing instilled in her to begin with. And there's something very odd about humans, is that if they are kept in an animal type environment, their brains actually physically retard. If they are not actually socialized, they're not actually taught, then they go into just animal instinct mode. It's really rather horrific. So I don't believe that they would ever give up the money. I think that they would see a benefit and then they would leave, and that's it.
It's very disturbing to kind of see what kind of people like that.
We're dealing with a wild child, though. We're talking about just an average person. I mean, obviously, most people, it's a little bit different. I mean, they had no socialization or anything like that. Whereas, even without moral values, most people are at least usually socialized enough and have some degree of empathy. But like I said, though, like you're saying, though, the wild child is not exactly standard human, though, by nature.
Yeah, but like we're saying, this person is divorced. The person that we're talking about, this hypothetical person, is divorced entirely from whatever moral conditioning they might have had from parents or whatever. Like we're assuming that doesn't exist. This is just a person with the requisite knowledge to know what's going on, but they have no level of socialization. Obviously that is
okay. That's different then. If you said no level of socialization, that's different. Mm-hmm. I thought you said more. You didn't say no moral. You said like no moral foundation. Yes. Like that, but you didn't say that they're completely unsocialized.
Well, obviously, this scenario is impossible in practicality, just hypothetically.
The scenario in itself would be impossible if they didn't have socialization. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to communicate with the people that they're talking to.
Yes, but let's just assume.
Yeah. I'm going to add an addendum to the scenario once we go through everyone, though, because there's another component that needs to be added to it. So go ahead and wrap up what you were going to say, though.
And just before I relinquish the floor here, this is not a singular case. It actually has happened twice in my knowledge. There was another child that was actually literally raised by wolves. I think it happened in Britain. He was a very similar case to where that he was abandoned as a child. I don't know how this happened, but a she-wolf actually nurtured him. I guess kind of, you could say, kept him alive, more like. And they found him, and they brought him back, and he acted the same exact way. So there's at least two anecdotal cases of this happening, and that's what I base my opinion off of.
Yeah, I actually, this is a tangent, but I really find it interesting to look at, to observe and analyze people that have been put under different kinds of socialization. So it's like, the one interesting case that I saw was a couple, I think it was back in April, they found a girl. If you remember back in late November, they've met a bunch of people. A bunch of people were caught and arrested, a few hundred, from government officials and government staff that were managing child trafficking rings around the country. I think it was like in Arizona, in Arizona, and in a couple of northeastern states. They were going back and forth through planes, and they had a big child trafficking ring. In April, one of the women that was in the child trafficking ring went onto the Dr. Phil show. And she actually was on interview, and they confirmed, it wasn't like a hoax or anything, they confirmed that she actually was involved with the government child trafficking rings, and she went to a lot of fancy corporatist parties, and she went with a lot of other different things, and she had no interaction with girls her age or girls with anything her age. The only interaction she had were learning how to properly respond to the old men that she was pleasuring at parties, and how and the interaction she had with while she was locked in the cells next to the women that were also being used as cum dumpsters along with her. And so basically, and the watching her on that fucking show is the most disturbing thing you can watch, because she's not a damn human being, almost to an extent, because she's just like, she's a damn puppet to almost to an extent. She acts incredibly autistic. And I'm not saying that in an offensive way. I'm saying that in a literal way. She acts incredibly autistic. She acts as if she's never had any social interaction whatsoever, incredibly antisocial. And she acts as if any of the stuff that was done to her wasn't actually bad. She doesn't realize any of the things done to her were actually like bad in any way. She just sees it as like, well, this is kind of what my life has been, and like when I do good things, I get good things happen to me. I get treats and shit, and I don't get my I don't get zapped, and I don't get lashed, and I don't get punished. And all this other shit. She's basically being treated like a fucking dog in a cum dumpster. And, like, she's been trained this way since she was a fucking kid. And, of course, they were fucking her when she was a kid, too. She lost her virginity when she was, like, 6, I think. It's like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like you go back, and I think this is in April. You can look for it. I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube. You look for this fucking girl that was in the child trafficking ring, and you look at it. You watch her face, and you watch her reactions. That girl is not a socialized human being. And anyways, and so going on, I want to ask. Let's go quickly through what the rest of us are going, and I'm going to add an addendum to what we were talking about. Skin, did you talk about what you thought was going to happen in the room?
Yeah, and I kind of changed it a little bit after he clarified that it's someone who's completely unsocialized. But I changed that to pretty much agree with what he said about the 10 out of 10 times they leave with everything.
Okay, and then Tage said like 9 out of 10 times you think that the person would take the money and it would go and wouldn't do anything with it.
Yeah, I think that well, I mean, someone said something earlier that interested me, which is that I think that the very fact that they were in the room with those other people might influence their decision, because I do.
That was what I said during my thing.
Yeah, I do think that there's a basic level of human empathy that occurs even without socialization. So I think that maybe it's possible that during some, like, a vast minority of cases, there would be someone would defy the norm and distribute the wealth some other way. But I do think that in almost all cases, people would act in their own self-interest before anything else.
Okay, and that's basically what I think. And so, Anarchy Nazi, what do you think, real quick?
Personally, I would do something. I was thinking about what I would do this entire time, and I think I've come to my ultimate solution, because I'm not necessarily. I don't believe that humans are necessarily bad or necessarily good. I'm more the neutral type. I believe that they have their self-interest and other such. So if I am going to leave the room, I will give some money out. However, I'm not going to give it to a specific person, because I don't want to show favoritism, nor do I want to show exact equality. However,
yes, I don't mean to interrupt, but you're a person who is and was raised with moral standards. You're not the hypothetical person we're talking about. I mean, any one of us would probably do something different than what somebody with no conditioning would do.
Yes. So, however, I would leave some money. Probably just drop it on the ground, go, never look back.
I believe raping small children is bad, but a necessary evil in our society.
So the addendum I'm going to add to this. So everyone pretty much, except for the objectivist here, who believes in neutral human nature.
You didn't ask me.
Yeah, I didn't ask you, but just go ahead. So what do you think, Gondola? What would you think happened in this scenario?
About what?
Okay, so this random person is given a shit ton of money, and they're put in a room with 2 other people, and they're told you should share this money with these 2 other people, but you don't have to, and you're going to walk out the door and you're never going to see these 2 people again. What does the person do? They're a normal person with nothing special about them.
Well, here's the thing, but that's different than the scenario you gave earlier, because you said earlier, I actually thought it was at first. You said normal person, and I think in most cases, normal person would give some of the money to it in most situations, at least some of it, especially if they're in the same room as the other people. But then you guys are saying that no, it's someone who's completely not socialized. Which
what I mean is it's a normal person it's a normal human being that's not been socialized.
All right, so if it's like a wild child, or something like that, I'd say 10 out of 10 times they'd take it. But if they've had, if they've been
through civilization, if they've been raised, then you think they'd leave money. If they've been raised in civilization, they've been okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, just because even if you weren't necessarily still with a strong moral foundation or anything like that, you at least have there's at least a degree of empathy you'll usually have just from being around people more. So I'd say
we're just talking about someone that hasn't been through any of that.
Yeah, but that's I think why I even think that maybe you would see a slightly different result if the person had the choice to give money to the people but wasn't with them or didn't see them, or if they were like actually physically present. Yeah. Because I think even from a person that's completely not socialized, people being physically present in front of them would trigger more of an empathetic response than having them be completely abstract concepts.
Okay, so there you go, Gondola. So it's basically like the people are physically there in the room with them, but the person is not socialized. The person hasn't been like raised as an actual person. They're just like a tribal. They're a human being that's just like been raised as just like an actual animal.
I think you guys are overthinking this. I think they would give the money. You know why?
Why?
Because someone told them to do it.
Well, yeah, true.
He said, "Oh, you don't have to," but then the person thinks like,
you should do it. He didn't say you have to, but you said you should do it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Someone's telling them this, right?
Yes.
They're not doing this just out of spontaneous, you know. They're doing this because someone was saying you should give the money to them, but you don't have to.
Yep.
And I think everyone just wants to defer to daddy. So yeah.
Like for me, if I had like the situation, if I was to craft it, I would just say you sleep, you wake up, you're in a room, there's a briefcase, you have a bunch of you have a bunch of money, and then there's like a glass window. You're on the side with a bunch of money. However, there's like a little hole, and there's two people on the other side, and you can just push the money through if you want to.
Okay, so here's the added scenario. So you're in the room again, and here's the difference though. This time the person has been socialized enough to know what things are. So they've been put through society, and they've been raised in a normal household, not in. There is no such thing as a normal household, but they've been raised through what you could consider the most norm household you can, the median household, and they are told, we've given you a shit ton of money, you should give it to these two people, but the person on the left is a cancer patient. They have stage 2 cancer, and if you don't give them money, they will die. Okay, so how does that change does that change anybody's answer? And if it doesn't,
yes, absolutely.
Well, yes, and only but
it's
yes,
a matter of life or death.
Only because
sure.
you're telling me. Yeah, yes, it changes my answer, but only because you're telling me that they're socialized.
Yeah, okay, but not because of empathy, but towards the cancer patient, but because they've been socialized.
Yes.
I'd say both for me. For me, I wouldn't give it to the normal guy. I'd give it to the cancer patient. It's a matter of life or death then.
Yes, but I think the mistake looking at it as though this was yourself, but we're not talking about a self-insert here.
We're not. No, we're not trying to do a self-insert. We're talking about just a regular person. It's not self-insert.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
So try your best to detach yourself from the situation when you're giving your answer. Let's start for.
Well, I'd also ask, like, how you said we're being given a massive amount of money. How much of this chunk of money do we need to give to the cancer patient for them to survive? Yeah, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
Yeah,
I don't think they would.
That's a good question.
They probably wouldn't either, but.
Alright, let's say. You know what? So, you have to give all your money to the cancer patient.
Ooh.
They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it.
I'll tell you what most people would do.
Will die, and if you give them half of their money, the cancer patient will still die. But if you give them all of your money, if they give all their money to the cancer patient will live. But if they take
they would take it all. Most cases they would take it all. In
most cases, so like I would say that's like 75% of the time at least.
Like we talked about on Twitter, I think there are deviations from the norm. We're talking about people. When we're talking about,
I also think it depends on the patient too. I mean, like if it's a child, I think
yes,
probably
that's
true.
Can we physically see the patient like in the condition?
That's also.
You're looking at the patient. The patient is in there with you, but they don't look any different. They're just a stage 2 cancer patient. They haven't gone through chemotherapy yet. They look like a normal person, but
they're an adult.
They're an adult that was just diagnosed with stage 2 cancer.
Now, okay,
most people are taking the money.
I disagree. Hold on. Let me say something here. Now, if we're going to look at this from the socialization aspect, if that's still, here in this...
They have been socialized. This is the difference between the first person and the second person.
I say around 50% of the people give up the money. In a animalistic man scenario with, everything being equal, their lack of knowledge except for these important aspects, I would say about... a quarter to an eighth of probably leaning more on the eighth of it due to, what you said about all the money would actually give up the money. But I'd say it's around 50-50 on
so that's more of a neutral standpoint, actually, really. If you think of it, it's more of a noble savage standpoint where it's like
yes, but the reasoning is it's not saying, but even still, we're not making the concession that people are naturally neutral. We're saying that the reason they're neutral on the issue is because of moral conditioning from society.
Yeah, and I agree with that standpoint. It's not because people are morally neutral. It has to do with, there's just a lot of factors to play in, especially with socialization, and especially with the person at hand
what
here.
you think, Ornstein? So let me get this straight, and I think this is what Tage is agreeing with you with. So you think, Ornstein, it's not because the socialization. You don't think it's because the neutral person now understands what the cancer patient is about to go through that they want to give them all their money. You think that 50% of the people would give the cancer patient the money because so many people in society have told them to give the money to the cancer patient.
Yeah,
have
to a
told them
certain
to give the
extent,
money
yeah.
to the cancer patient.
No,
And
not
it also
necessarily
comes
because
down
not
to
necessarily because of just the pressure, but also because they've been conditioned that way to an extent that they actually agree with it. At this
yeah,
point.
Well,
yeah.
it's not.
I was
it's not
also
really,
going to.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's.
I was
pressure.
also going to bring up, just things like guilt. People,
Yes.
a lot of types of people, me included, would be extremely guilt-ridden if I just ignored something like that.
for
I
sure.
would be haunted with it for the rest of my life.
Well,
But there are some people out there that
I
aren't
think it
nearly
might
as
have been
affected by
that-
such things.
That's an elevated moral code that's been instantiated within your brain. That's not.
Yeah.
That's not just your conscience talking. That's something that's within you. That's been put. Something has been beaten inside of you by someone or something that from a very early age in your life that's told you that is inherently wrong to do, to walk away with the money.
Yes, because we
Yeah,
know,
and that's
hold on,
true.
I mean,
But I was including this into the whole idea of socialization, and that's why I included it.
But I mean, what I think that I think that I would agree that level of empathy and guilt would be as a result of societal conditioning, because when we look at humans that existed before the advent of society, they killed each other like nothing, and they didn't seem to feel guilty about it. So
yeah,
I don't think that's true.
So I think
that's a little bit of a difficult claim to make.
So,
I think,
unless anybody
Is it?
else, what?
Not your own tribe. You wouldn't do that.
Well, I mean,
I
don't necessarily.
We don't
agree.
really have a whole lot of information about, I guess it would be the Neolithic man. So I don't really know. If
Even during times when civilization existed, it was just less advanced.
I don't.
So, unless anybody else has any disagreement with this, I think what we're basically all saying is that the very, like, this man before civilization is pretty much entirely in evolutionary self-interest, and after that they become civilized and socialized, and the socialization and civilization brings the empathy and guilt, and along with the empathy and guilt brings along everything else needed to create the scenario in which the socialized man, would give up all of that money to the cancer patient.
And it's a chain of events. This society exists because of that self-interest in the first place, but the conditions that arise from the society cause the moral norms that would cause people to have an elevated.
The self-interest created the social norms that created the society, but the whole point of it all is that it's a collective idea that everyone has had, and everyone is beating into each other all the time. But it's not something that existed before the society was created.
No, I would not say that it's inherent in people.
So does that mean that we're all agreeing on a negative? And when I say negative, you're thinking I'm going to more of a people are evil thing. No, what I'm basically saying is just like, do you think people are just inherently self-interested? And
I would prefer
before civilization.
I would prefer to not use the term negative, because I don't think it's useful in this situation. But I would say that people are inherently self-interested on the whole. Yes.
Yeah, I'd agree with that for the most part.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that we have to remember whenever we're talking about this, especially with not common day, but current day man, is the idea of the evolution that mankind has taken. Although a lot of this is socialization, we also can't ignore the fact that a lot of this might actually be evolutionarily tied to us. So who knows?
So it's
all
talking about it being socialization, that it's all a social construct.
And also the whole wild child thing is a very all I want to say about that is that the whole wild child scenario is actually not really human nature in and of itself, because I mean, keep in mind, even before civilization, we were still in tribal groups. We were still social. We're still social within tribal groups. So that's kind of the one thing to keep in mind there. Is that
we're social within tribal groups within those situations, but there's actually it's really, I think it's a matter of experimentation. You'd have to find out how much of it is biologically instantiated. Like, honestly, like, and I think if you do raise someone without all of these things, there's a lot of things taken away from them. That, which is what was so astonishing to me about, and it's why I had to bring up that case of that girl that was raised in that situation.
I think that it's important for me to make the clarification that when I'm talking about self-interest, I'm not saying that every one of these things that are done in our self-interest is like a conscious decision for that reason, but that the acting in self-interest is just instinctual to humans because of evolution.
Yes, no.
Yes. Right.
No. You act in your own self-interest because that's how you reproduce. You don't reproduce if you're not acting in your own self-interest.
Yeah, not every one of these things that we do, even though the reasoning behind them is self-interest, we're not making a conscious weighing of the choice between them with every single one of them.
Yeah.
Like me, I'm more neutral. I think that yes, people are pretty much inherently selfish. However, I do believe that there is some empathy tied to us genetically, or at least in our mind.
Yes, but I think the reason that empathy exists evolutionarily is because it's in the people's self-interest to form communities, because communities offer a better chance of survival and reproduction.
Yeah, true.
So even that empathy has underpinnings in inherent self-interest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could get into the nitty-gritty of this, into the philosophy of, is there really such a thing as being non-self-centered, being giving? And I
would
really
argue
don't know where I stand with that, really.
Even when we're doing things that don't have a material benefit to us, we're doing them because they make us feel good, and the reason they make us feel good is because of evolutionary prerogatives designed to make us do things in our own self-interest.
Yeah.
Well, you see,
and I understand that aspect, but at the same time, I can come up with some fringe cases where I think I don't necessarily know where they stand.
This is why from the beginning I said on the not
I get you.
Not necessarily that there are no deviations from this, because of course there are outliers in any norm.
Yeah, of course.
Well, and this is really interesting because I think it's funny how this entire conversation will pretty much tie into directly what you're reading right now, Ornstein, which is with Plato's Republic, which is where he outlines his society where the philosopher kings are trying to get in touch with what is called it's like the ultimate good, or anyways, anything that's true. And Plato and Socrates come into this problem at the very beginning of it, which is that they try to define exactly what is good. And they immediately come up with the problem, which is you can't. And the best way to start by defining what is good is by immediately looking at what is evil. And so here's where we're going to transition from talking about, the basis of human nature, which I think we've pretty much all come to a general, not a complete consensus on at all, but a very general consensus on, which is not negative, but we say, well, self-interest propagates a lot of things, basically. Yes. And so what I can say from that is that from that point, we start manifesting our political ideas. And when we start manifesting our political ideas, we all have different ideas about how those manifest out in real life. And from there, that's where all these radically different ideas come from. And so I'm going to start explaining mine real quick. And so what I see is that there's an initial human rejection of things that do not belong in society. So there was primitive man, and they went around and they did, not even primitive man, but like there's even historical man that went around and they did lots of horrible things for a very long time. They went around, they ravaged, they killed, they raped, they pillaged, and they took whatever they wanted because it was in their best self-interest. Not because they particularly didn't care or had no empathy towards other people, but because they had their own country, they had their own people, and they were far away enough from these other people to not have empathy or care about them at all. And they had no global prospect towards the world. These were just other people in another place, and they didn't really care about them. So they were going to take them, they were going to rape their women, they were going to take all of their property, they were going to take all their gold, and they were going to get the fuck out of there. And that's what happened in East Asia. That's what happened with the Vikings. That's what happened with with the conquistadors. That's what happened with a lot of fucking people. And I don't think it was. I think that religion in many cases was used as an excuse. I think it was used as, you know, a hearsay, but I think it's just mostly people just going fucking around saying, "Hey, you motherfuckers,
yeah, but
I want to take all of your shit."
one interesting thing I would say is that the orchestrators of a society have often used this tactic to quell an empathetic response in their own people, and it's making the people that they're committing these atrocities to, they're dehumanizing them or making them out to be less than human. Because our empathetic response doesn't necessarily extend to non-humans, or at least it doesn't do. It doesn't. Yeah, well, it doesn't.
There's a question of how far our empathetic response should go out to, and how close it should go into. So,
should or does.
So no. What I'm saying is, like, okay, there's two ways you could look at this. It's like, are we caring enough? There's the nationalistic question, which is, are we caring enough about our own? Which is always a question that the nationalists will always ask you. And then there's the other question that the scientists and people that have a more globalistic mindset will ask us, are we caring enough about the fringe, or are we caring enough about the other? Which would be, there's actually, and I'm not saying this because it's just something that's like out of my ass, but I actually saw some people doing a question time about it, which was like, they were basically asking, well, should we be giving extensions of human rights to chimpanzees and monkeys? And basically their inherent argument about it was, well, there's a lot of chimps, there's a lot of apes that can actually learn basic human language using their fingers and sign language and other things. And it's, if they can learn how to do basic civil practices, we don't really see the point in not giving them just very basic human rights, or treating them in a more humane way, rather than putting them up in cages at a zoo for people to stare and laugh at. And they were saying,
I would agree with that.
Should we not be treating our primate companions with more respect and dignity? Maybe we should be clothing them? Maybe we should be doing all these things. And, you know, I'm giving a very neutral standpoint to the opinion right here. I'm not giving my own opinion while describing this, but there's a lot of different opinions you could have about both of those things, about how much should you care about your own and how much should you care about the other. And those are the two ends of the spectrum in regards to that. Now, and what I'm saying is basically up to prehistory, up until before basically the internet happened and the past 100 years happened, the first two world wars, people did not give a flying shit about people that lived 200, 300 miles away from them. And what I mean by that is, like, if you were living in Norway and someone lived in India, unless they were your colony, which they weren't if you lived in Norway, you did not give a flying fuck about them. So if you went over there, you were going to steal their shit and rape and pillage them, as long as no one was going to give you any shit about it. If the British Empire was going to give you shit about it, then you're going to care. But if no one was going to give you shit about it, you're going to go do it. And that's what I think the whole deal was, is they didn't have any empathy for people that were that foreign to them, because they weren't even really human to them. They're just people so far away that they can't even begin to comprehend them. We have this incredibly, we've had made so many great strides in creating a global mindset nowadays, because you can get online and you can talk to people from so many fuck-ton different places nowadays. We have people from several different countries in this chat talking to us right now.
Yeah.
I see a fucking Brit Bong and someone from Norway in this chat right fucking now. And it's just like, like we wouldn't be able to have these people in here if we didn't. So
I want to say that I think certain things like that can arise when you have societies which they do this naturally, but the morals that people uphold are just ones that they've had instilled in them, and they haven't reasoned them out. And I think you see that sort of thing in Western society, where, I mean, it would be considered horrible if I were to kill my dog and cook it and eat it, but we eat pork and beef. The cows and pigs have the same level of intelligence, even sometimes more than canines.
Pigs are assholes, though.
Cows are fucking tasty, dude. Okay, here's the difference, Tage. See, cows do not have deliciously beautiful paw pads. They do not have beautiful paw pads that you can softly, fluffily touch. They have not been domesticated in the same way as dogs.
I'm not gonna lie, cows are fucking cute.
Yes, but if you reason it out, there isn't a logical reason why it should be okay to slaughter cows and pigs and not dogs.
Now, I can give you an actual logical reason
Pigs
why.
eat each other by nature.
Go ahead, Ornstein. What is
The
it?
logical reason why is because we have we have selectively bred and created the current species of cattle and pigs in order to be slaughtered.
Okay,
Meanwhile, the current breed of dogs
as
that we're running has been purpose bred in order to work.
With the cattle and pigs right now is that the reason they get to live and prosper the way they do right now, and I say that kind of tentatively because some of them are not living and prospering or in the proper conditions to live and prosper, which should be handled and taken care of. But if they are being given the proper living conditions, they are being allowed to live in good conditions, hopefully.
Yeah, no. Well, I think what you're
so that we can eat them.
Saying what I'm saying, you guys are offering you guys are telling me practical reasons why we do this, and I understand the practical reasons behind them. But what is the moral distinction?
What is the moral distinction between a cow and a dog?
Well, now here, I don't know necessarily if this answers your question, but
because humans are assholes.
What? No. I'm saying, what is the moral distinction between killing a dog and killing a pig or a cow?
Dogs have an instinctual.
I think it might have to do with purpose
towards humans compared to cows or pigs.
Yeah, purpose.
I mean, because the thing is with dogs, they actually do have an instinctual recognition of.
It's almost like a deal, like what? Oh, sorry, I'm not meaning to interrupt.
It's just that it's a lot. So we have kind of basically the way we and dogs co-evolve with each other. There actually is kind of more of an empathy we have towards them than they have towards us, compared to pigs and cattle, which are not inherently companion animals the way they.
Yeah, but this is a result of the behavior that we're already doing and have been doing. I'm saying from the get go.
Yeah.
With what I was saying,
dogs are fucking
purpose.
happy to just be here in the first place, and it's like cows and cattle. I don't think they feel the exact same way. I think dogs are happy to be like just around their masters.
I think
to be
isn't it?
Dogs have an instinctual trust towards people that the other two don't.
Yes, but it's been bred into them. It's not just something that they have naturally.
So you're saying it's like why don't we just breed cows and
cattle?
Well,
I mean, I'm saying had we not bred dogs in the same way, would it then become moral to slaughter dogs?
It's more to kill animals.
Probably dogs would be viewed more like wild hogs are,
because
they would be undomesticated. They'd be undomesticated wolves, and so they'd probably be viewed very similar to wild hogs are right now, which is like you can go and gun them down with fucking helicopters.
Well, yeah, okay. Where I'm at with it is that I understand that they're not the exact same, but I don't think that they're different enough to be able to have a distinct moral line between killing a dog and killing a pig or a cow.
And that's what I was going to get on with the whole purpose thing. Is that although it may not seem like a moral argument, I do believe it has a little bit of a tinge to it that is, from morality. The purpose of the dog is to work with mankind. Part of our deal with the dog, okay, if you want to call it that, is that we will provide food and sustenance in return for their work. In an actual working environment with the dog as it was bred to do. Now with a cow, our deal with them is that we will feed them, we will guarantee this such and such lifespan, and then they will be slaughtered, and then we will eat them.
Well, I kind of want to offer a different argument, and it's not going to be a moral argument or really a practical argument. It's going to be an argument of it's kind of the way it is, and we can't do a lot to change it unless you want to change it. Which is kind of this is what.
Absolutely no, and I'm only raising this. I'm only raising this concern insofar as it's philosophical. I eat meat as much as the next guy. I really don't get that much.
No.
Yeah.
Like I get what you're saying, but like here's basically the way I see it. It's basically, I see what you're saying, but at the same time, I started thinking about it's like, okay, what would happen if we did start saying, okay, now it's okay to slaughter dogs in the streets, and then you think about the kind of fucking uproar you'd get, and it's not a religious uproar. It's not. It's
instilled morals.
It's an instilled moral, but it's not even really instilled moral. You see, because what you look at it because there's actually it's a biologically instantiated moral. Because if you look at a dog, dogs have been bred to look cute as fuck to humans, especially the puppies. And
But do they look are they hold on, are they inherently cute to us, or is that just another societal condition?
They're inherently cute by
They're inherently cute. That's for damn sure.
When a human being that has not been regulated or societally trained at all, like a baby, stares into the eyes of a dog or a puppy, the endorphins are released inside of that baby's brains, and they will start giggling because a chemical reaction has just gone off in their brain, and they are happy because that dog it looks cute to them. It's the facial structure, it's the facial recognition, and it's just like a baby looking at a snake. It's something that's been ingrained in them for so many tens of thousands of years that it's okay. Snakes are dangerous. Dogs are cute.
We also have kind of a natural.
Okay, hold on. I got something. I just thought
cute.
I just thought
hold on.
What are we even talking about?
We went off.
I just want to finish this statement because I do find it interesting. Biologically speaking, in terms of what Zipper is doing, it's exactly the same response that a regular human would have with like a giggling baby. That's the same thing we're tapping.
Yeah, no, it's the same response. It's the same response a human would have with the giggling baby, but the giggling baby would also have the response with it, which is what I mean by that is an unsocialized human being would have that response with a puppy or a dog. Which means it's entirely biological. It has nothing to do with social construction.
Now, yes, but it wasn't always that way.
It wasn't always that way, Tage. And so your point is correct. And what I'm saying is like the entire point of it is we could raise cattle to be that way. It would take a really damn long time, and we could untrain dogs to be that way, and it would also take a really damn long time. But this is just kind of the way it is.
Yeah, and by the way, the moral conclusion of my argument wasn't supposed to be that it should be okay to slaughter dogs, but rather that it should not be okay to slaughter any animals. But
well, I don't know. I think a lot of the problem here also comes down to not only just the purpose of the deal that we have between the animals, but also the purpose of the killing. Generally speaking, people don't exert energy to kill something unless they have a purpose for doing so.
Oh, absolutely. But that's not a moral argument.
No, I'm just kind of brainstorming here.
I'm not going to make a moral argument for killing cows because it's a really dirty thing.
I actually think that we would, as a society, be better off in moving away from that sort of agriculture because it's not beneficial to us insofar as most of the world's pollution comes from like cattle and livestock. So.
I mean, I'm not going to disagree with you that we should probably eat less meat, and especially in the West and in America, but then we're going to have to deal with other problems like, there's kind of like a net tugging effect to whenever you start moving away from, animals and start moving towards vegetables and stuff. A lot of times you're kind of taking them away from something else because we're using a lot of farmland right now to, I guess I probably shouldn't really talk on this because I don't really know what I'm talking about. Yeah. I apologize.
I mean, I haven't looked super far into the issue either.
I think we should stop because we're about to go into vegetarianism, and if we want to start, if we can talk about veganism and vegetarianism at some time, but I would like to have someone talking that is like a vegan or vegetarian, like super is into this argument. But I don't think
I was former vegan.
I don't think we have anyone super like that here.
No,
super
I'm not.
Yeah, I think the philosophy behind it is interesting, but I still meat regardless. So
yeah. Anyways, so
whatever moral qualms I may have do not overpower my affinity for meat.
Well, the justification that I see is that if a cheetah can do it, then why can't I?
Exactly, or let's say about pigs earlier. Hold on. Pig meat's good enough for pigs. It's good enough for me.
Anyway, so
yeah, we should probably move on before I start outraging people.
We're really on the third part, which I was trying to start. I'm going to basically explain how that state of nature of self-interest it expands into my political and religious views. And we're not really going to try, because you could probably spend like fucking forever trying to like not trying, but just criticizing my points of view and everything else, and we can do that. But I just basically want to get a basic grasp of where you get from self-interest into everyone's individual political views. So I want to see if everyone can move from, oh, well, everyone has self-interest, to this is why I'm a minarchist, this is why I'm a democratic socialist in practicality, and why I would like stuff to be decentralized. This is why I'm a centrist. This is why blah, 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 blah. I think I'd like us to move from that. And I'm going to start with mine. And so, okay, so like I said, I think people generally have self-interest. They're self-interested in things, and so they have the needs. And so they go around and they get everything they need, but there's a scarcity of resources. And so once they get everything they need, they have to go to other people to get the stuff that they want. And they go to people far away enough from them that they don't care about them or have any sort of empathy for them to go and take care of them. So they kill, they pillage, they rape, and they do whatever they want to them, to take all of their gold and treasure and land and whatever they want to from them to accrue more wealth. And then they have their wants, and they fulfill more and more wants. And as they fulfill the wants, they get more and more wants. They get more complicated wants as they go on, and those more complicated wants require more wealth. And so as you go along there, that's what creates this entire bound of what I consider to be, I don't consider the self-interest within itself to be evil, but I consider the acts that the people will commit to fulfill their wants to be evil within itself. And so I don't consider humans to be inherently evil, but I consider the human component, the natural human component, to be negative. And I consider it to be, what I call it in my religious position is original sin. And
okay, well,
and what that means is that everybody has the capacity to do bad things. And you're never, and what you said, the way you said it, Tage, you said it's that majority of the time people will act in their own self-interest, and that there's exceptions to that. And that's what I'm saying, is that when you are actively looking at what is the right thing to do in this situation, what is the good thing to do, then you are the exception. You become the exception. And what I call that is, in philosophy, it's the orientation towards the good. It's seeking the good, like in Plato's Republic. It's trying to become a philosopher king. And in religion, it's being aligned with Jesus. That's the Christian position. And the philosophical position is trying to become a philosopher king. And yeah.
What I want to say about it is that I think that what we talked about before is that just because something is our Darwinian self-interest, just because something is programmed into us, we talked about socialization and how we can mitigate that using socialization. And I think that I think that we all would agree that just because something that our evolutionary predilection is to be completely self-interested, I think that can also be mitigated through society and through moral conditioning. And furthermore, I think that I think that saying that human nature is a certain way doesn't limit you to thinking that is the highest level of morality that humans should aspire to.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
I'm not saying that as a refutation. What you're saying, I'm just saying that like in terms of my own abstraction on it.
I'm saying basically that's the starting point. And I'm saying it's like, if you have nothing that you're pointed towards, if you're just kind of aimless and you don't have anything in general you want to do with your life, and you don't actually want to do any good, then you will automatically gravitate towards doing bad things because you are self-interested. Because you are self-interested, you will end up in conflict with others because of scarcity of resources, and the scarcity of resources will create situations and scenarios where you will do harmful things to other people. And that in not in all cases, but in some cases, in the cases I outlined just now, I can consider personally, in my personal belief, to be evil. And I made it very specific what I think is evil, which is like, the killing of others, the raping of other people, pillaging, and lots of other things, destruction of other people's property for no good reason. It's just like there's very specific things that I consider just to be inherently evil, and there are specific cases where self-interest will create that. Not all self-interest, but some scenarios developed by self-interest.
I think that the point of moral difference that separates at a base level leftists and people on the right, especially on the libertarian right, is that people on the libertarian right will usually take the position that it's that their moral responsibility extends only insofar as not hurting other people directly.
Yes.
And people on the left will often take the moral stance that having the ability to do something that would prevent somebody from suffering and choosing not to is immoral. And I would go so far as to take that stance.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily right.
I'll start from where you did with the libertarian right stance, which is, well, I am myself and an individual, and I have the rights to myself. All I want to do is to be left alone, and as long as I am doing my own thing, I am not hurting anyone else, and I will not hurt anyone else as long as no one else hurts me. So let me do my own thing and leave me alone, and that's basically the libertarian right stance. And,
well, generally,
and what the authoritarian right stance to that generally is that, well, actually no, because there are certain things that you do in your everyday life that do affect other people. You can't prevent yourself from affecting other people. You go around every day. If you live in society with other people, you do affect other people. You do hurt other people with the things you do with yourself, with your body. You certainly hurt your family when you take drugs that destroy your body. You certainly do hurt your family when you throw yourself off buildings. You do certainly hurt your family when you're hurting yourself. You hurt your community when you're an inefficient person. You hurt your community when you go out there and you say spiteful, hateful things to every single person you see every single day. You know, it's like your words affect other people, your actions affect other people, and there is a certain correctness to what the libertarian right says, in that, oh well, there are some things I do that are just me, but there is a definite boundary line where the things they do affect other people, and there is a moral responsibility there.
And I would pose what I think is an interesting moral question, which is, we talked about this earlier in terms of what the human nature to do in this situation is. But if you have the capacity to, with very little injury to yourself, help somebody else and choose not to, is that moral?
Is it moral to do that?
Personally, I do think that it's the proper moral is to, if you have the capacity to help someone. However, I think it's morally wrong to force someone to help someone out against their will.
Yeah, that's
well, basically,
that's fair.
That's the same. I'll agree with that.
I think that's mainly what the libertarian right is saying, is that it's less a matter of helping people, a matter of having the ability to help somebody and not doing it. It's a matter that we don't want to be forced to help people, because the thing about
if I see someone who needs help, I'm going to stop. Yeah, I'll do what I can to help them, but I don't want someone, basically holding a gun in my head.
The problem that they have is that there's actually a lot of problems that they're trying to solve that they can't solve on an individual level. And so the reason that they have the positions that they do is because they're attempting to solve problems that they can't solve as an individual.
Yeah, but the thing is, what I think we'd all agree that you told me right now in that situation you would go ahead and help that person.
Yes.
The thing is, a lot of people, most of us feel that way on a moral perspective. So, and we seek then to create a society that lives up to that moral perspective. And I think in a libertarian society that isn't possible.
It is
possible because we listen to me, and I wasn't finished. Listen, because we talked about earlier, human nature is to act only in self-interest, but then we also talked about that not helping somebody, even if it's not in your direct self-interest, is immoral. So if we're living in a society that doesn't have some level of authoritarianism, how can you accomplish a society that lives up to your moral standard?
Well, here's the thing, Tage, and this is, I think, a big difference. I actually don't want to create a society that is like that, where everyone lives up to that standard. I want to create a me that lives up to that standard, because honestly, I say that on the chat that I would end up doing that I would help that person, but if I was in that situation, I don't know whether or not I would actually help that person. So
I'm in the same place as you.
It's kind of it's a thing of, I don't think about creating a system that helps everyone. I think of creating a me that helps everyone, and what I hope is that everyone that sees me being the absolute best person that I could possibly be will extenuate out into everyone else. And while you may think that doesn't work, I actually think that from what I've seen, the way that networking works as a person, that your effect has an exponential amount of it has an exponential amount of effect on other people around you because you're networked to people.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, but you can. There isn't. You can't. You don't have to choose between the two.
Yeah. Well,
you don't have. You don't have to
what,
forfeit. You don't have to forfeit being an example of a person of moral character in order to try and create that in society at the same time.
Yes, I know, but it's a matter of focus. So it's like and this comes from the way I was raised, which is basically, and this might explain some of my behavior towards you and how you might have seen it, which is that I've been raised in the way the specific Protestant teaching I've been basically to reflect not on the way other people have lived their lives, but the way you're living your life. It's like it's a teaching of deal with your own shit first, then deal with your family's shit, then deal with everyone else's shit. And it's like that's the level you can do. If you have everything in your life sorted out, then maybe you can work on your family. Then maybe you can work in a community. And it's basically the idea of, well, you shouldn't be judging other people and how they've been acting because you think you have a higher moral ground, because you believe in God, because you go to church every Sunday, because you read your stupid little Bible. No, that's not the way we look at it. It's like, the way we look at it is like, you're reading this Bible for you. You're reading this Bible because you have shit in your life you have to take care of. It's your little study guide, and you better fucking study, kiddo, because you have some things to learn. That's the way we look at it.
Yeah, I see what you mean, but you can go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the other thing I also want to adds that is if someone doesn't want to help someone, you can't force that on them unless you have something like unless you have an overly powerful huge government to make someone do that. And the thing is, like you're saying, people always look out for their self-interest, but it also goes for government as well, and that's one of the biggest things there. And the thing is, you basically have to have you can't make someone, if someone doesn't want to do that, you can't make them do it without force.
Yeah, well, but the thing is that you can't have. I would argue you can't have a successful society or a government without at least some level of force and coercion. I would argue that voluntary association by itself does not result in a society that's successful.
Voluntary association. Well, okay, let me go back to.
It's the same reason why charity can't provide for them on its own.
Well, I'm going to step back for a little bit because I wasn't following what we were just talking about. Not what you just said, but the previous statement. So I'm not following the argument. Let me go back to what I was trying to say in enforcing what I was saying. So I just said, I think society begins with a refutation of things that are inherently evil, which is like, okay, killing's bad, murder's bad, rape is bad. These things, X is bad. And then you have these, and it's like, these things will be punishable by a order of law. And then you create the government and you create society. And that's what the law is. The law is the biggest chicken in the room, the biggest bully in the room that has the monopoly of violence. And the monopoly of violence is the person that will punish everyone that goes against these laws that everyone has agreed upon, which is, okay, we're not going to kill each other anymore, or else the big boy will kill you, which is government. Or now in our modern societies, we have different kinds of punishments for killing. If you don't,
if society, but the reason I would disagree with you, because you're saying that society springs from us deciding these things are wrong. I'm saying I think you're wrong. I think that society springs from people coming to an agreement that forfeiting the right to do these things is mutually beneficial for everyone. It's not necessarily people agreeing, hey, murder is wrong inherently. It's people saying, hey, wouldn't it be nice if we all agreed to not kill each other?
Well, no, because I think well, first of all, I think those two things aren't that different from each other.
Not totally different.
But what I'm saying is, if you agree with something similar to what Anarchy Nazi was saying earlier, which is that the earliest forms of governments were mostly theocracies, and that they sprung out of those, then that you can pretty much agree with me on the fact that was pretty much where they started, where we said murder was wrong, because you can imagine if that was just everyone was mutually agreeing on, oh, well, murder is wrong, That might have not been the best thing. So
okay,
maybe it
I see
was
I see where you're coming from.
So if,
but let me
all the
ask.
earliest forms of government were theocracies, then it probably was a statement of right and wrong, and that murder was wrong.
Yeah, but here, I think that society started coalescing before the level that it would become a theocracy, and I think that it would be based on the social contract theory. But aside from that, which would I think constitute a minor disagreement because the result is the same at the end of the day.
I just don't think modern statehoods were created before the theocracies were instantiated.
Well,
by the time the statehoods came
community.
into power, the idea of murder being wrong was already a human concept universally.
Okay, that's fair. But let me let me put it to you like this: if we agree, which we already have ad nauseum, that selfishness, even in the face of what we would consider moral wrong, is human nature, you would consider then society to be a mitigation of human nature, and that human nature in that capacity.
No. Well, okay. I look at it this way. So it's basically, it's not a mitigation of human nature in a way. It's basically a prevention of certain scenarios. It's a prevention. Okay. I'm changing posture so I can think better. All right.
May I please?
Yes.
Okay.
Did I say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, thinking about at least when I was saying that theocracies were the first forms of government, is that mainly when a theocracy is a form of government, it's less of a matter of the government is the theocratic government is telling you that murder is wrong. It's more people don't care about that. They can give less of a shit about whether or not the theocratic government thinks that murder is wrong. What they care about is that God thinks murder is wrong, and that's what eventually leads out is that this is a matter of leadership. That creates the idea of having a president, of having representatives. Is the idea of this person specifically thinks that murder is wrong, and you follow that person.
Yeah, and I think that in that respect, religion is a way of convincing people to think the way you do in order to control them. Because if you look throughout human history, you can't govern over a people if the only thing that legitimizes your government is force, because they'll eventually topple you. But if you can convince them that your government is just and that there's a higher purpose for it, and that the things you're ordaining are true and must be upheld, then they'll be content under it.
Well, what we try to say that the modern political scientists try to say that every single government of modern history should be governed, which should be given legitimacy by a rational legal system, which means that the laws make sense, which is why we allow ourselves to be governed under them. Now, the older system, which is the traditional system, is that the government was given rights and was given the right to govern people,
ordained by a higher power.
Ordained by God, and this is what was given in China by the emperor. It's given to Britain by God. It was given to by pretty much most monarchs, and if you can go to the UK, and what my political science teachers tried to tell me was that it is now a rational legal system, which it is. It's basically morphed into a rational legal system.
It is.
But it has the corpse of the monarchy still lying on top of it. And whether or not the monarchy would ever go away is just it's a question of it's a question for after Queen Elizabeth passes away.
Yeah, but here I think I agree completely with what you're saying, and I think that the fundamental difference between those two theories of government is that one believes that the right to govern is given by a higher power, and one believes that the right to govern is the consent of the people to the government.
I think that was pretty much the rational legal system was only created after objectivism and scientific theory was even developed, which was only about 500 years ago. Before that. And so that's what I think is that even in Roman Greece and in everything before that and everything after that up until the 1500s, we didn't have rational legal systems. We just had the traditional systems, which is, a higher being has told this leader that he has the power to rule over us, and what he says is right and wrong. And that's
by the way, this is really interesting, and I hate to kill it, but in like 10 minutes I have to get off because it's pretty late.
All right, that's cool. So I just basically want to get back really quick and finish what I was saying, and see if we can do a quick rundown of what everyone else thinks. It's basically, my basic fundamental principle is just law and order and maintenance of a civil society. And this is just very simple stuff. It's like, I could really live to bend a lot of other things around this, but there's some very simple things that I just think have to be there in the society. I think it's like, if you have laws that exist within the society, like murder's wrong, for instance, or stealing is wrong, you have to have punishments and deterrents set up for that. And this is something that modern societies get completely wrong, especially modern Western societies. And people from Middle Eastern countries tell us we're doing this wrong. And they are correct when they tell us this. They come over here and they say, we never get punished for doing anything in your countries. We come over here and we do whatever the fuck we want, and sometimes we get jail time and sometimes we get sent back. But you guys are fucking pussies, and you all are going to fade into obsolescence because we know how to govern and you don't. And they're actually correct in that, because we don't know how to properly put people into prison anymore. Now, what I mean by that is that when someone does something wrong, the point of that person almost wholly is not rehabilitation. We can try to rehabilitate someone, but the rehabilitation of a prisoner, of someone who has committed a crime, is almost entirely up to that person themselves. We can give them tools, but we can't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars trying to make them a good person again. I don't think that's something we should be wasting our time on. What we should be doing is we should be using our time to make sure that the next person that's going to commit the crime, the person on the street, has the resources they have to not commit a crime. So they have the education and they have the food and resources to not commit another crime. And they also have the smarts and are fearful enough of the consequences to not commit another crime. So that's what's called deterrence, and it's called providing for the people. So you much more want to provide for people. You want to make sure that everyone has everything they need, and you don't think. I don't know what you think about crime rate, but I think you would assume is that if people were being provided for, they wouldn't be committing as much crime.
Well, yeah, I would. I'll say a couple things, and then I'll answer what you just asked me. But I think that I agree to a certain extent that there has to be a punitive layer of criminal justice in order to act as a deterrent. But I think you can't get carried away with it and let it become too draconian. Like, I've heard some people suggest to me that we execute like minor criminals and such as a deterrent. I don't think that's
no. But what I think, as far as anybody that commits a major crime that we've deemed, if someone like rapes someone, if someone kills someone, if someone does something so horrible that person is going to be looked at with contempt and disgust for the rest of their lives in society, a pedophile, something like that, somebody that we consider the lower bottom scum of society that cannot be rehabilitated, I think honestly that execution, in my personal opinion, is okay. And for people that have committed minor crimes, it's not a matter of executing them. It's a matter of doing a kind of punishment to them that makes sure that everyone that sees that punishment to them does not want to commit that same crime.
And I understand what you're saying, but I think it's at least crime in Western countries much more so to poverty and conditions that these people are being raised in than I do that they don't have enough of a deterrent not to commit the crime. And I agree that both are factors.
Yeah,
both are factors.
You can call it a factor, and you can say it's a factor, and I might believe you to a tiny extent, but honestly, when I look at the way that like the police treat the people in my city, in every city I've ever been to, and the way that people treat the police, it's all to do with the relationship between the two. That's all I can think of. People do not see the police as the people that protect them anymore. They see the police as people that they should be afraid of. They see the police as people that they should hide from. They should hide their drugs from. They should hide their cars from because they're speeding on the road. Because
there is a reason for that.
No, there is a big reason for that. Because all the police are doing is they're trying to get their funding from stupid little miniature taxes they get, from road taxes by going 10, 15 miles over the limit. And there's dumb laws regarding drug regulation and all these other things. And so people are scared to do these things. And there's so many small, minor, stupid things that have created poor relations between the police and the citizens. And because of that, the entire relationship between police and the citizens is backwards to what it should be.
I agree, but I think that the reason why people have mistrust towards the police is because they enforce laws that are unjust, and the fact that the laws are unjust and the fact that the police are enforcing them is what causes people's discontent with the police. But really, I think it stems back to what we're expecting the police to do, which is nitpick at society and
yeah. Well, see, that's the thing, is the police aren't protecting the citizens. Don't view the police as people protecting them from criminals and horrible people. They see them as people nitpicking them.
Because in a lot of respects, that is the truth.
They see them as tax collectors and pickpocketers.
Yes.
And that's not the way it's supposed to be. They're not supposed to be taking $300 out of your paycheck when you're trying to get home an hour early on the interstate. They're not supposed to be trying to get you in jail for having a bag of weed in your car. They're supposed to be there when someone's robbing a fucking store or a bank when you're inside of it, and they're supposed to make you feel really fucking safe. Or they're supposed to
and that's where I think doing away with such punitive measures for crime I would deem largely victimless would go miles in terms of improving relations between police and communities.
Well, and so what I say is, like,
we may disagree on that, but
what I think is, in regards to specific things, we might have different opinions. Like we might have different opinions on very specific issues, and we'd have to go into specific detail for those. But in general, what I just think is that if we have a more punitive system for the people, just as a deterrent for people that want to commit future crimes, and we make if we help make the relationship between police and citizens better by making the police's job not nitpicking people but rather just protecting people, we make their job, oh, you're actually supposed to go out and you're supposed to patrol the streets so that people aren't getting mugged, so that people aren't getting fucking taken advantage of on the streets.
Well, yeah, but the thing that I'm trying to say, I guess, is that I don't have an issue with punitive sentencing, but I don't think we should be doing it to punish crimes that don't really directly victimize anybody.
Well, yes, no, I can agree with you on that. But we may disagree on whether or not a crime affects someone, and that would be a very long conversation. So it's like
it would,
yeah,
and I really do have to go.
Yeah, I know.
So, I mean, it's been I've actually really enjoyed this conversation.
I enjoyed it too, Tage.
Yes.
I've enjoyed it as well.
I would honestly
enjoy it as well.
It's fairly interesting.
If you wanted to do another one of these at any time, I'd be down to do it.
That sounds awesome, man. Thank you guys for watching. All of the Twitter handles of those involved in this video are on display here, and I'll be giving links to Buddy Club and The Academy in the description. If you'd like to join Anime Opposition, the left-leaning server our guest Tage is owner of, please bug him at his Twitter handle or his Discord account, both in the description as well. Expect more content. Another podcast is coming incredibly soon, and much quicker than this one, since I have a lot of the format set up now. It will be about YouTube's new limited state policy. We're going to be talking about that, and branching out into anonymity and content creation online, focusing in general around censorship. So that'll be a fun talk, also with a slightly different setup this time. Anyways, have a wonderful day, and only rape babies if it's necessary.